So I want to take you through and give you just one example of those Christian principles. You got them on the back of your handout so you can follow along with those if you'd like. The first of those principles is agency and accountability. Where do we find agency and accountability in the Constitution of the United States? We find it in the fact that we elect our representatives and that they then create our laws. There's the agency, and the accountability requires us to be responsible in watching what they do and in supervising what they do. The second set of principles was equity and fairness. Now you realize as I'm going through, and I have found, in my notebook I found all these references that can be used. I'm only picking one of each of those. But the one that I found that best demonstrated equity and fairness to me was the jury system. That you can be tried by a jury of your peers. That gives us equity and fairness in our nation. But if you understand the original Constitution, you know that originally, in a jury situation, the jury could decide to set the law aside in the case of an individual if it felt that the law did not apply, and judge the individual by his particular circumstances. That right given to us in the Constitution by our founding fathers has been taken away from us. It was taken away in the 1800s. One of the changes made to our Constitution. Had we left that in the Constitution, you would have had greater freedom under the Constitution, because any jury of your peers could have looked at any situation that you were involved in, and they could have said, but this situation, this and this, are such that we believe that in this particular situation, the individual should not be held accountable. And that was a powerful benefit given to each one of us. Now, the next one would be integrity and honesty. Let's talk about bills of attainder. A bill of attainder allows the leader of a nation or any ruling group to step in and take away the possessions of another individual. This has been used to great disrepute throughout the history of the world. This is how kings became so wealthy. They would pick someone that had a lot of property and such, accuse that individual of something, whether it be true or not, and then confiscate all of that individual's property, taking it away forever from the individual and from his posterity. We do have bills of attainder possible in the United States of America, but they are under controls and they apply only to the individual at his time. And when that individual dies, that property must be returned to his children and his posterity, so they have the benefits of that. Now the next one, of course, would be justice and mercy, and how can we go any place but impeachment on that process? So justice means that we can impeach an individual for what he has done, or she. But mercy states that that can only apply to his civil office. It cannot apply to his personal property, that property be taken away. We are not properly using impeachment in the United States of America. It doesn't have anything to do with Donald Trump. If we're going to talk about an individual that needs to be impeached, let's talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who has traveled the world and in some cases has stated that the Constitution of the United States is not the document that she would use if she was trying to establish liberty. Now next, let's look at the set of principles called order and organization, and every single part of the Constitution applies to this. So we have each house being responsible for its own properties. We have, if you create an invention, you can control that invention. We have navies being controlled. We have rules and requirements and regulations for the military, all kinds of places throughout the Constitution. We have order and organization. Next, you'll find on that list peace and prosperity, and if we're going to talk about prosperity, we've got to talk about the gold and silver standard. That was the core of the economic process of the United States of America. We have violated it, and because we have violated it, we paid a price. We deal with inflation, and we deal with money, literally a money situation that is out of control. Had we stayed with the original Constitution, we had powerful benefits there. Now, the next one is safety and security, and of course that leads us right to the Second Amendment and the right that we have to bear arms to protect ourselves. And finally, the last one would be work and self-reliance, and there's a very interesting part of the whole process of the Constitution that comes in here, because we don't have anything in the Constitution that tells us we have to work and we have to be self-reliant. So the Constitution of the United States mandates this principle by not stating it and leaving that to the states. So we still have work and self-reliance represented in the Constitution of the United States, despite the fact that it is not specifically mentioned in the Constitution. So you can see how all of those principles operate. So as I worked with these principles and the concepts that I was understanding began to grow, and I began to see the Constitution in a new light. I saw it, I had always seen it as a beautiful document, one based in truth and in virtue. But I began to see it as a larger force of something that then became an example to the entire world, that we have this beautiful law given to us by God that's based on His principles, and look at the beautiful things that we can do with that Constitution. And so in the middle of that, an opportunity came up for me to speak. I was asked to be the keynote speaker at the annual Lincoln Day event, which I wasn't talking about Lincoln's Civil War, and I'm talking Revolutionary War, but I was still asked to be the speaker at the annual Lincoln event taught in Douglas County, Colorado, where I was going to be talking to, the leaders of the Republican Party in that. And that is a very solidly Republican county there in that state. And so, as I always do, I always pray about the things that I'm going to do. And as I prayed about this, I asked, what topic should I address? And the impression came to my mind that I should deal with this topic of the religious and Christian nature of the Constitution. And I said, okay, that's great. So I studied, I prepared my notes. It's time for us to go to Colorado. We drive there, we spend the day with some friends beforehand, and it begins to dawn on me what I'm going to do here. I'm going to stand up in front of a group of current modern politicians, and I'm going to talk to them about the Christian nature of the Constitution. I started getting a little nervous. And so, actually the night before, so up during the night, they have this, our friends that we stayed with have this lovely closet. I can go in there and sit down on the floor and shut the door all by myself. And I loved it. So I'm sitting there on the floor and I'm saying, are you sure that you really want to do this? I asked myself over and over again, are you sure that you want to do this? All day long of the event, I asked myself, are you sure? I'm sitting at the guest table, I'm listening to myself being introduced as the speaker, and the whole time in the back of my mind I'm saying, are you sure that this is what I should be doing? Are you sure that I should be talking about this topic? I stood up, I walked to the podium, and I delivered my 35 to 40-minute address on the Constitution of the United States. And as I did, that when you speak, you learn to interpret the audience. Those of you who've had a lot of experience speaking will know this. But there's this dual process going on in your head. So you've got this thing that's coming out of your mouth, and you've got this front part where your brain is going, but in the back of that, you're looking at the audience and you're going, I think that lady over there in the purple top is not receiving this very well. I wonder what I can do to adjust this to her better. You have this process going on. So I'm giving this address, and I'm looking at the audience, and I'm realizing that this is not going very well. And I'm thinking about who's in that audience. Because we had an event beforehand, and I had learned that this was one of the events that they hold where the political candidates who are coming up for election are there to tell you about who they are and what they believe in. And I had met all these people. We had gubernatorial candidates, we had the state, the national state legislators and representatives. We had all of the people who were important in the Republican Party there, and I'm standing up giving this talk about Christian principles, knowing that the people that are sitting in that audience have not been doing a lot of the things that I've been talking about. That most politicians today are involved in the two-party system, where they're fighting between Republicans and Democrats, where they're trying to get power, and they're not focusing what they're doing on Christian principles, because if they were, we'd have a different system of government than we've got. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. So there I am, standing at the podium, and I'm going through this presentation, doing the things that I had felt so strongly that I should do. When I finished, they turned it over to a question and answer, and that was very interesting. Nobody was saying very much. One woman raised her hand and stood to ask the question, where did you get that set of Christian principles? Now, I've been worried about what the questions might be as they came from this group, and had not really had the opportunity to prepare for that. And so I had been very attentive to asking that when that information, when any questions were asked me, I would be able to give the answers. She asked me that question and I'd never thought of it before. But the answer came instantly to my mind, and this is that answer. These are the principles the Founding Fathers teach. These are the principles they lived by. And so that's what I said. These are the principles of the Founding Fathers. And so she accepted that. The meeting ended, and usually when a meeting is over, people will come up to you and they'll say, well, you know, you had one point and I wanted to talk about that, and oh, I really liked what you had to say. No. End the presentation, and the people in the group quietly left. And I knew that I had said things